Hi, I'm Phil Ware. Welcome. This is Together. Now, if you're watching from the U.S. and sharing in this time of worship and Bible study, I hope you have something warm, both to drink and warm your body from the inside and warm clothes on the outside. For those of you outside the U.S., it is really cold right now. We have a polar vortex or something dumping tons of cold air into the U.S. But it's a special day, isn't it? And I want to wish you Happy Disciples Day, a day of love. Yes, it's Disciples Day. You're probably going, what in the world is he talking about? It's Valentine's Day. And yes, it is Valentine's Day on the calendar, but I think we as followers of Jesus need to reclaim it because love, at least in the way that Jesus demonstrated it, is something we should know all about and know how to share. In fact, Jesus says, this is how you're going to know my disciples. From John 13, verses 34 and 35, Jesus says, a new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. And it is Valentine's Day and Sunday. And it's a day when people talk about love and they send cards and candy and flowers. And that's important because we're in a difficult time. COVID has made sharing love and demonstrating love even more important than it has been in any Valentine's Day that I've been alive. And so we're reclaiming it as Disciples Day because we're aware that isolation and loneliness is a worse pandemic than the viral pandemic itself. It's important that we affirm and demonstrate our love right now on Disciples Day. And that's where today's verse, our verse of the day, becomes really crucial because it emphasizes thinking about people we love, and every time we think about them, we rejoice and give a prayer of thanksgiving. Our verse of the day is from Philippians 1, verses 3 and 4. I thank my God every time I remember you, every time. In all my prayers, for all of you, I always pray with joy. Paul couldn't work in another every time and all if he could, but he loves them. And it's easy for us to look at Paul's letters, especially if we've studied the New Testament a lot, and go, well, Phil, he says that in all his letters. He does some prayer of thanksgiving for all the churches. And that's true. He does that with all the churches except the churches in Galatia, in the book of Galatians, where he's worried that they're slipping back into law keeping as a way of feeling righteous. But all the rest he does, but they're specific and they're individual, and they affirm specific things in the lives of those believers. Yes, we have a right to be concerned that things are genuine. We want to know the food that we're eating is good for us. It's a genuine, clean, organic vegetable. I just read recently where some hackers broke in and changed the formula of water that a whole town was drinking. We want to know what we have and what we're putting into our bodies is genuine. And when we buy products, we want genuine products. We don't want knockoffs or fakes that are going to break. I still remember going and shopping with my wife in the early days of our marriage, and she found a beautiful brown purse, and on that purse it had a little sticker, a little gold sticker, and it said genuine. Now, we knew the purse wasn't leather. We couldn't afford an expensive leather purse in those days, but it looked nice, so it was her prized possession, a genuine imitation fake leather purse. We want what's genuine and real, and so I don't want to teach you a skill or a way to speak to people that's fake. And I want to emphasize to you, Paul's love for these people is genuine. He had a close connection to the people in Philippi. It began when he baptized Lydia and those that worked for her, those of her household, by the river in Philippi. And all of those folks were baptized, and Paul went to live in what was probably a 3-story house where Lydia lived on the top floor, and then her workers and Paul and her guest would live on the second floor, and the first floor was the place that she did her business as a fabric maker and a seller of purple. Not long after Paul had been in Philippi, he was arrested and thrown in jail, and an earthquake, while he and Silas were singing praises to God, released him from prison. And the guard was going to take his life rather than be disgraced and executed dishonorably. But Paul said, don't, we're still here. And he began to have an opportunity to share Christ with his jailer, and he took him home. And the jailer and his family washed his wounds. They had a meal with Paul and Silas. And then as Paul shared with them the gospel, they came to believe in Christ and were baptized that very night, that same hour of the night, and they rejoiced at having come to God. When you begin a church with relationships like that, they're real and tender. So Paul had a deep relationship with them. But secondly, the Philippian church was a group of people that were key participants in giving to the needs of the church in Jerusalem. And Paul even used them as an example of a group of people who, out of their overwhelming difficulties, there welled up a rich generosity, and they became not only generous givers, but an example to many others in the process. In fact, this was a church, a group of people that Paul allowed to support him. This is the only church, maybe the church in Thessalonica, but the only church or churches that he allowed to support him financially in his mission. He didn't want there to be a misunderstanding that he was doing this for money. He was doing it for them, and he self-supported. In addition, when Paul traveled back and forth across the Mediterranean Sea, he made every effort to go back through Macedonia and visit the church in Philippi. His love for them was genuine, and his isolation was even greater than our own isolation today with COVID. I don't know about you, but I'm about crazy being confined mostly to the house, not getting out and being with people, not being able to touch and fellowship and hug and see people face to face. And even when you see them face to face, you wear a mask because you want to be a good neighbor and you don't want to infect them. So I'm looking forward to the day that this isolation is broken. But Paul had no idea. His isolation could end in death. His isolation could end in his return. But at this point, he's under arrest, probably in Rome, because we find out that those that were in charge of his arrest, well, some of them had heard about Jesus. And even in the elite Praetorian Guard, some had come to Christ. So Paul's love for the church in Philippi was genuine, and he cared for them so much that he used these words in Philippians 4:1. Therefore, my brothers and sisters whom I love and long for, you are my joy and my crown. Yes, Paul's affection and love and prayer is genuine. I thank my God every time I remember you, and all my prayers for all of you I pray with joy. I like to call this a note prayer. Paul has note prayers in most of his letters, as we've already seen, whether they were to churches or whether they were to individuals like Timothy and Titus. And these note prayers of thanksgiving are something that we need to take note of. because there's something we can do. It's a way we can affirm and love and bless others when we're separated from them, whether it's COVID or distance or some other form of isolation. So notice what this note prayer from Paul to the Philippians has behind it. It's heartfelt, it's genuine, it's joyous. He celebrates who they are and what they mean to him. He does it in prayer. In other words, he brings them before God, and he shares that prayer with them as part of a letter read in a church service. Very simple, heartfelt, joyous prayer that's shared with those who receive it. And this, dear brother and sister, is where the rubber meets the road in our message today. Because I could talk to you about Thanksgiving and inclusiveness and joy and sending notes, but that's not really going to do any good. What I want to encourage you to do is to take this moment to write a note prayer of thanks to people that are precious to you. Who is someone that needs a note prayer of thanks from you? Why not include some of the same simple words that Paul used? Why not send the note in your own handwriting? Even if you text it or email it, take a picture of a note you've written by hand. It'll mean more, I promise. And why not include one specific reason or personal attribute or special memory that you have with that person in your note prayer of thanks? You see, it's not as important that we know that we can do this as it is that we actually send a note prayer of thanks. So, I'm going to close today with just a simple reminder. And while Paul wrote these words, this is how we at heartlight.org and verseoftheday.com feel about you. I thank my God every time I remember you. In my prayers, always, for all of you, I always pray with joy. Until next week, God bless.